Loudness does not command respect. It often exposes a lack of it. Most people think speaking more forcefully makes them stronger, but in reality, the need to raise your voice usually reveals insecurity, not authority. Quiet authority has a different effect. It does not rush to prove itself. It does not fight for space. It simply stands there, steady and unshaken, and people feel the difference. The moment you start shouting to be heard, you often lose the power that silence already had. Most people never realize how much respect they lose by trying too hard to win it. They think force creates influence, when it often destroys it. That is why these 5 phrases matter. They can change the way people hear you, respond to you, and remember you. And it starts with understanding the Stoic rule behind respectful speech. Stoic speech is self-command, not performance. The goal is not to intimidate people, dominate them, or win through aggression. The goal is to stay calm, clear, and unshaken. Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus understood that real strength is measured by restraint, not volume. Reaction belongs to the unstable mind. Control belongs to the disciplined one. Noise tries to overpower. Silence holds its ground. Impulse wants release. Principle chooses the better outcome. That is why respect begins before the words are spoken. It begins in the inner state behind them. If you keep trying to force respect, you stay stuck looking less powerful than you are. And once that is clear, the first 2 phrases become powerful. Enough to change the room. Because sometimes the strongest move is not to attack, it is to clarify and stand firm. The first 2 phrases are, "Let me be clear," and "I see it differently." And they work because they slow the conversation down. They remove emotional bait. They force the other person to engage with clarity instead of chaos. Most people lose respect because they answer too fast, defend too much, and let the other person set the emotional tone. That is how assumption wins over clarity. That is how reaction replaces wisdom. But calm disagreement is stronger than a loud defense. When you say, "Let me be clear," you take back the pace. When you say, "I see it differently," you keep your ground without begging to be understood. Most people never realize that clarity exposes weak pressure. And once the pressure loses its grip, the next move is to draw a line. The next phrase does exactly that, without apology. The third phrase is simple. "That doesn't work for me." No over-explaining, no apologizing, no inviting debate. That is what makes it powerful. It creates a boundary without begging for approval. It protects self-respect instead of performing for acceptance. Weakness makes boundaries negotiable. Inner command makes them clear. Performance tries to keep people comfortable. Authenticity tells the truth and stands by it. People who respect themselves do not keep making their limits flexible just to avoid discomfort. They understand the hidden cost of weak boundaries, a life where everyone gets access to you, your time, your energy, your peace. And if you keep saying yes to avoid tension, you stay trapped in other people's expectations. Real power begins when your words finally match your standards. And once your standards are clear, the next move is knowing when to stop giving more. The 4th phrase is, "I'm not available for that." Short, final, unshaken. And that is exactly why it works. It ends pressure without drama. It shuts down manipulation without inviting a fight. It removes the opening for endless debate. That is the difference between chaos and peace, reaction and control. The point is not to be cold. The point is to be unavailable to nonsense. Because over-accessibility has a cost most people ignore: emotional exhaustion, resentment, and weak presence. Every time you explain your limits too much, you reopen the door. Most people never realize how much power they lose by over-explaining what should have already been clear. This phrase works because it is short enough to stop the loop, but strong enough to end it. And once the loop is broken, silence becomes the most powerful reply of all. The 5th phrase is, "I've already made my decision." Then stop talking. That silence is not weakness, it is control. When you let silence carry the weight, you end manipulation, prevent spiraling, and force the other person to sit with what was already said. Noise tries to keep the fight alive. Silence lets the moment end. Chaos wants one more sentence, one more defense, one more reaction. Peace knows when to stop. Psychologically, people often keep pushing only because they sense uncertainty. The moment that uncertainty disappears, the pressure loses power. Most people never realize how powerful they become the moment they stop chasing closure from someone who came to provoke them. And that is the shift that changes everything, because the real power is not just in what you say, it is in who you are when you say it. This is what changes when you speak from Stoic control. You become harder to provoke, harder to pressure, and harder to manipulate. Weak people react quickly, strong people respond deliberately, and that changes your whole identity. You become calmer, more respected, less available to nonsense, and harder to rattle. You stop treating every conversation like a battle. You stop giving away your peace just to be understood. That is the power of the Stoic communicator. Rare words, clear words, controlled words. Words that carry weight because they are not wasted. If this gave you clarity, reflect on which phrase you need most. Comment on the one that hit hardest and continue into another video on Stoicism, boundaries, or emotional mastery.